Right. So first of all, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. My name is Javi, and I will be talking today about the art of in-game cinematics with UEFN. So who am I? My name is Javi. I'm a filmmaker, a professional video editor, and UEFN educator and content creator. I have a YouTube channel where my main focus is just creating tutorials to teach cinematics specific to UEFN. I'm also the UEFN lead at Television Games. Television Games is a video game studio, one of the most popular and important in Latin America. And we recently, after more than 16 years of video game development and over 5 years of Unreal Engine specific development, for the past 4 to 5 months, we have been developing UEFN experiences. And I have been fortunate enough to be the one leading those UEFN experimentations. One of the latest UEFN experiences we have made at the studio is Havoc Hotel, which is a roguelike action experience that you may or may have not played until now. I'm also a freelance marketing content creator. I make game trailers, social media content, and content strategy consultant, mostly focused on the Fortnite ecosystem. And I'm also the creator of the UEFN Creative Directory, this Notion database that you may or may have not used so far. So before we begin talking about cinematics, I want us to go way back in time, just a little bit, to 1890. When the first motion picture camera was born, which is the kinetograph. It was super big and run into electricity. It was created by Thomas Edison with his assistant. And it recorded stuff like this, just literally motion picture. And by that time, the fact that you could see moving images was just astonishing enough for it to be a whole attraction. So it doesn't matter what you captured by that time, people just wanted to see moving pictures. But that time, we got movies like this, for example, The Boxing Cats, which is an actual movie. And it's just 30 seconds of these cats that were trained to kind of like simulate fighting. And actually, fun fact, this movie has a 5.8 IMDb rating. And this is no Photoshop. Like, you can go and search for this, and it has over 1,400 ratings. So yeah, it's a classic. Then we got the Lumiere brothers, who had, they made a very smaller camera. So now you didn't need to be at a studio. You could take that camera outside. So they started documenting reality. They took the camera outside and recorded stuff like this. They filmed. This is one of the the most famous one for them, the arrival of the train. And after that, we got George Méliès, who actually discovered the cut. And now, through the cut, he started doing different effects, different tricks. Again, right now, at this time, film is just something, like for fairs. It's just an attraction. It's just people like to see moving images, that's all. But he, through the cut and through different production and effects, started to tell stories. So now, through the cut and through film and acting and different effects and sets, we started to tell stories. And over here, we have Edwin Porter making history. Like right now, this that you're seeing right here, it's something revolutionary in cinema. And that is that the camera moved. So if you see the camera starts there and it starts panning, that's something that we now understand and know as a pan. But at the time, it was revolutionary. Like that someone said, like, what if we move the camera? And this was another revolutionary thing from the same movie, which is called The Great Train Robbery, which is a close-up. By that time, the fact that we took the camera so close to a subject and actually looking at us as the audience and shooting at us was absolutely scary at the time. And then the close-up started to be something really, very, very common in movies. Here we have an example of a close-up now in a movie called Intolerance. And the close-up really changed the way that acting worked in film, because since now the camera could be close to the subject instead of very far away, the subject could act a little bit more naturally. It didn't have to do this great movements for you to understand the emotion. Like, it just needed that face, and you could understand that that person was sad. We also had other type of different shots. This is called an insert shot. So now directors could take the camera very close to a subject, and the audience understood that, okay, that's something important. That's a detail that I need to pay attention to. Then we got, and we entered the German Expressionism, and we start to think about lighting, about the set, about costumes, about how all of these things take a great part into making the audience feel something. So in this film, for example, we see a character that's obviously like very crazy, but the way that everything takes into a part into making us feel that craziness of the character, it's what it's important over here. We go then to the beginning of montage as we know it today. And we have the Battleship Potemkin by Sergei Eisenstein, and we see a new style of montage. So now we see very fast cuts and very different shots, and we understand that they are related somehow. And that was something that's very new. It's not new for us now, but at that time it was. So now we have shot A, and we see this woman that has like a very worried face, and we see the baby, and we understand that she's worried because of the baby. And the same happens with the guy. He's worried because of the baby, and we understand that now. But at the time, that was a film grammar that it was being invented. And over 100 years had to pass for us to kind of understand this. And if you think about it, it's the same that we do here. Like, if we understand this meme, it's because we have shot A in relationship to shot B, and the same to shot A in relationship to shot B. That's the way that we kind of like understood film grammar and understood the audiovisual language. Then it came sound, and we had our film, like the first famous sound film with what, which was the Jazz Singer. And yeah, you should hear it a little bit. But now we had the technology that could take motion picture in perfect sync with sound. And that was an amazing discovery. And it allowed us to create new genres. For example, the famous Walt Disney animations that now could be in perfect sync with sound. And Walt Disney was very famous for this type of animations. We also started creating musicals, and now horror movies or monster movies were being super popular because thanks to sound, now you could see how King Kong sounds. You could see the chaos around the city, the screams, and people were fascinated by it. So gangster movies, monster movies, everything that sounded like chaos started to get a lot more popular. Then we got to color. See the Wizard of Oz, and now since we can see color, we started to think about the psychology of color, the color theory. Now we know that witches are green. Why are they green? They were just black and white before. And we start thinking about color and how we can use color to portray different emotions, to portray different expressions, or to kind of like take different things and how we can use color to make the audience feel different things, right? Then we go to special effects, CGI. We get famous movies like Terminator by James Cameron. And we start seeing new things that take us to new different worlds, thank you to this new CGI technology. The same happened with Jurassic Park, where we could see just this giant T-Rex, almost like if it was real. And we could keep going with this on and again. But I understand that by this time, you're saying, thanks, Javi, but what does this all have to do with UEFN? First of all, thank you for asking. And it has to do because I want us to, before we begin, understand something. And it's that technological advancements have always transformed the way we tell stories. It happened with sound, color, with smaller cameras that we could take outside. Technology has always allowed us to think of storytelling in very different and unique ways. So through the story or the whole story of cinema, we have different elements like framing, movement, montage, sound, color, visual effects, lighting, performance, sets, and environments. And all of this throughout these whole years allowed us to achieve many different things. The first one is that it created a language we all understand, and without even knowing it, we all have learned. If we see a short film with no dialogue, but with sufficient expression, it doesn't matter what our mother tongue is, we all can understand the visual language, the audiovisual language of film. And also, we have over 100 years in which we have understood all of these tools and elements and how they work and how we can use them to generate emotion in the audience. And all of these elements, framing, movement, montage, all of those elements are elements that you can find here in UEFN. More specifically, in Sequencer, which is this great tool that works similar to a video editing software. You have the timeline, and you can add different elements to that timeline just so you can animate it and do whatever you want with those in order to tell a story. So what I want to do now is let's make a cinematic from the ground up. With all of these elements that I mentioned, let's make a cinematic. But first, what is an in-game cinematic? It is also known as a cutscene, which is like the most popular term to refer as an in-game cinematic. It is also known as an in-game movie, an event scene, and also that thing you skip when you just want to shoot some zombies. And according to Wikipedia, a cutscene or event scene is a sequence in a video game that is not interactive, interrupting the gameplay. Such scenes are used to show conversations between characters, set the mood, reward the player, introduce newer models and gameplay elements, show the effects of a player's action, create emotional connections, improve pacing, or foreshadow future events. Now, as you can see, I put an asterisk in sequence in a video game that is not interactive because I do not completely agree with this. And you'll see that this is not always the case, and more so in the case of Fortnite. Because one of the most popular cinematic sequences that you can find in Fortnite throughout all of these years are their live events. And if you see the live events, even though at some points you may have restrictions, the player in most of these cases can interact. For example, here the player can interact and decide if they want to zoom in into what is going on with the Lego people, or if they just want to focus on the gliding, you know? But there are elements of interaction still, even though it is a cinematic sequence. And this happens because even if we don't put any cameras inside of UEFN, there will always be a camera, always. Actually, in every video game that you play. And that camera is a player camera. And in Fortnite, player camera can be modified in different ways. So the player camera, it is definitely a huge factor when it comes to game design. When you're directing a game, when you're designing a game, you need to kind of like take care of how you want that camera to look. So it serves a purpose in gameplay. But as every camera, the choices that you take with that camera will also be narrative choices everywhere. Because what you are doing with that camera is you are choosing what you want the player to see. And if you take those kind of decisions, you are also deciding what do you want the player to feel. But this can be achieved to a variety of camera devices that UEFN has. I'm not going to be talking about those specifically. I'm going to be talking about the cameras in Sequencer. So now we go back to Sequencer, which is this line right here. And we can see that adding a camera is absolutely easy. You just click in this icon of the camera, and you already have a camera that you can move around and position it however you like. This camera has many different properties. The main ones are the aperture, focal length, and the focus. The focal length determines how wide you want your shot to be, right? If you want it to be narrow or if you want it to be wider, you can set it up there, and even you can animate it if that's something that you wanted. So to start our cinematic, I'm going to start with a static shot, which is this one, which, as you can see, it's super boring. But it doesn't have to be, and it is not in every case that it's boring. So if we see uses of a static shot, for example, we see in this game that's called Chocolate Factory Tycoon, they use a static shot just so the player can see themselves dancing alongside the characters from the game. So they can jump into there and it will change to a static camera that allows the player to see themselves, or even with friends, and record themselves or take screenshots and just save a good memory. And another great example of this is in Phantom Investigation, where you can place a camera inside and then you can check what the camera is seeing. And this in the game is used to catch some type of paranormal activity inside the house. And it's still a static shot, but it's not that boring. In my case, it is definitely boring because that's not what I want to do. So let's talk about camera movement. In Sequencer, as you can with many other objects, you can animate the things that you add to your level sequence. In my case, I want to animate the camera, and I can. I can just put a keyframe in an initial position that I want the camera to be in, and then I add a keyframe to an end position that I want my camera to be at. And Sequencer will animate it, just like it's doing right now. And right now, it looks a bit better, but it's still a bit boring. But it doesn't have to be. If we see this example of this game called Paranoid, we see here that the developer is using camera movement to simulate a POV shot, right? Like a first-person shot of a story, and is being chased by these creatures. But if you see, the only thing we are seeing is a camera being animated in different ways and with a more exciting pace. But it's a moving camera. That's all it is. So going back to my cinematic, it looks a bit empty. It looks very, very empty. So I want to add some actors, some characters. There's various ways in which we can do this in UEFN. The first one is adding custom characters. So in my case, for my cinematic, I wanted to have a boss, a big boss, you know, some kind of monster that terrorizes Tilted Towers. So I actually bought this monster. It came right out of the box, you know, ready to be used in UEFN. So it not only had all the materials and textures necessary, it had animations, which was something that I desperately needed, because I am not an animator and I actually don't know about animation. So if I want to do cinematics, I need my skeletal meshes to have animations that I can use. So if you can see here, I can use all of the animations to kind of like build my cinematic and to do what I want with that boss. But what if I don't want to spend, or I don't have the technical capabilities to do my own characters, to do my own, you know, skeletal meshes and work with those? Is there anything that I can do in Fortnite? Some stuff that is readily available in Fortnite that I can use for my cinematics? And the truth is that there is over 800 of those. And we have those with the character device. So if you have the character device, you can see that it's a device that you can drag, and this device will allow you to change, you know, the skeletal mesh into different characters that Fortnite already has. There are over 800 of those. So you can definitely play around with it and check it out. But they are static. They are just standing there. And I need them, like animated. How do I do that? And again, I am not an animator. And maybe a bunch of you are not animators as well. So what should we do? The way that I handle this is with Mixamo. So how do we take animations from Mixamo and retarget them to be used in UEFN? So first, what is Mixamo? In case you don't know what Mixamo is a big library of readily available animations that you can just search and download for free. All you need is an Adobe account, and you have access to over 3,000 animations that you can use. But these are used with a different skeleton, right? The skeleton that Mixamo animations have is just the Mixamo skeleton. So how can we use those in UEFN? So first, we need to download the files, the FBX from Mixamo, import them into UEFN, and once we have those FBX imported into UEFN, we need to retarget them. And maybe you've seen that the retarget process could be somehow or somewhat complicated, but it actually is, at least in this case with Mixamo, it's absolutely easy, and I'm going to show you how it is. So if you have the animation from Mixamo, you can go to a part which says retarget animations. You select the target skeleton that you want to have. In our case, is the skeleton for the character device, which is the characters that we want to use. And just like that, it automatically retargets those Mixamo animations to be used with our character devices. So now we have our characters animated without anything else. And it takes 30 seconds. Like, it's just like download, 3 clicks in UEFN, and you have animations. And Mixamo being over 3,000 animations, I'm pretty sure that you can have some fun with it. But what if 3,000 animations isn't enough? What if you want something a little bit more custom made, something very specific to your specific needs for your cinematics? Then that's where motion capture comes in. And we all understand motion capture, and we see motion capture mostly in this like AAA, super big budget games with this, very complex suits. And you may think like you need to spend thousands of dollars to do that. But at least for this, I tried a little bit something differently, and something that you could try at home if you're interested about motion capture in UEFN as well. And is an app called Move One. And Move One works with your phone, and it just records your movements, and through AI, it generates a motion captured animation of your video. So I tried this. The app comes with 30 credits for free. It's not cheap, but 30 credits are about 30 seconds of video. So it's more than enough for you to try it out. I actually spent my credits doing this cinematic for this talk. So it's more than enough to kind of like understand how it works. And the process of retargeting is the same that we did with Mixamo. So first, we have the animation. This is me just recording myself. What I wanted to do is that I wanted to have a news reporter. So Mixamo didn't have, like news reporter animations. So what I did was like, I will be behaving like a news reporter saying that there's a monster in Tilted Towers. And that's what I did over there. And then we can just import the animation, retarget as we did with Mixamo. And then it just works with the character device, like it did with Mixamo. And as you can see, it works. It works like fairly well. There's definitely some hiccups here and there, but for purposes of motion capture and just using your phone, I think it did a pretty good job. We also have MetaHuman Animator. And with MetaHuman Animator, you can capture high fidelity motion, like facial motion capture. In my case, I used UE5 to capture, my MetaHuman identity and capture my facial performance. I baked the animation. I imported it to UEFN and retargeted to the animation character. And as you can see, that MetaHuman animator, result can also be used with the animation characters. So now I have this face, and excuse my cringy acting, but it works. That's what's important. If you want to see a little bit more about how this works, how motion capture works, I recommend you check out this experience. It's called Joke Night, made by Epic. And there you can actually see how the animation character looks with, like proper motion capture, MetaHuman Animator working together. And this is an experience that you can go and see, play, but Epic also has a template from this stand-up set that you can check out. So you can see, more the files and how it works. Now let's go with lights. In my case, since I not only don't know how to animate, but I don't know how to do a lot of other stuffs. For my cinematic, I want to do some explosions, but I didn't know how to do explosions. So I thought myself, how do I make explosions without making explosions? The first thing I thought was, what if I animate lighting as if it was, like if explosions were happening? So that's what I did. If you want, you can also add lighting and add different type of lights to your sequencer. And as I said before, in sequencer, you not only can animate the position of objects, you can also animate different properties of different objects and devices. In this case, for example, what I did, I wanted to animate the intensity property. So if I thought about explosions, it would be high intensity at the beginning, and then the intensity of the light slowly fading away. So that's what I tried to replicate, just kind of like the light coming from explosions. So we didn't need to see the explosions, but we understood they were happening. And then it comes sound. And in this case, since I didn't know how to make explosions, I could just add to the lights of these explosions some explosion sounds. In Sequencer, you can also add different audio tracks, and you can stack them up however you want and work with those as you want. You can fade those audios as well. You can cut like a big audio file. You could just cut them. Over here, it was just one file with all of the explosion sounds, and all I did was just cut those and start arranging them how I needed them. So yeah, that red thing is, I thought like it would be cool if the monster had some kind of like a laser. But if I don't know how to make explosions, I definitely don't know how to make a big laser. But it sounds, which for me, it's what's important. Now, a great example of animation, lighting, and sound is this experience called the Music Megaverse that you can see right here, and you can explore if you want. It's a musical performance, and they did an amazing job blending all of those things together. So if you're interested about this kind of stuff, I really recommend you check out this experience. Now let's talk about titles, because titles are also important. What if you want to add, I don't know, like the logo of your studio at the beginning of your game, or the title of your game, or different overlays, for example. So in UEFN, you can create different widget blueprints. And in those widget blueprints, just use different PNGs of what you want. So in my case, I wanted to have a title for my experience. And since I have a news reporter, it would be very weird if we see a news reporter and it doesn't look like if it was on the news, right? So I needed an overlay for news, and I needed the title for my game. So that's what I did. And I created some HUD message devices to choose like when we can show those widget blueprints. Another great, very good thing about Sequencer is that in Sequencer, if you add devices, you can also determine different events with these devices. So in this case, I added the HUD message device. And in Sequencer, I can determine when the show event happens and when the hide event happens. So the HUD message device handles the widget blueprint, but I can determine when to show what the widget blueprint has and when to hide it. So the result is something like this. I can also determine what kind of transition I want. And now I have a reporter, but the reporter, it looks more like if it was actually like on the news. And now, just at the end, let's talk about a little bit about effects and color. Something that I believe it works a lot and it works really, really well with, with UEFN is the effect of a camera shake. Now, the effect of a camera shake is very, very important, and UEFN does, it really helps us to do this very easily because you already have a blueprint class called camera shake that you can modify and you can add to your camera. So over here, you have different parameters for that camera shake, which are mainly just frequency and amplitude, which means how big the camera shake movements are and how fast those happens. And for example, for the roar of my monster, I wanted the camera to shake so the player can actually feel that the monster is there. So that's what I did. And another thing that we can do is add a post-process volume, and the post-process volume will allow us to modify and change different color parameters for our cinematic. So not only color, but also different effects, such like film grain, if that's something that we want, if we want to add a vignette, if we want to modify the exposure, the brightness. Those are many of the countless parameters that the post-processing volume has. If we didn't have a cinematic, it will actually modify the way the player perceives and looks at the world. But in our case, since I'm showing a cinematic, it will modify the way the cinematic plays. So in this case in particular, I wanted to start the cinematic with just like a very like a shiny, bright day, and as we transition to the monster, I wanted the day to feel kind of like a little bit more dark and less saturated. And all of those elements, well, as you can see, those are elements that you can add into Sequencer and that you can use different tools in UEFN to create a fully fledged cinematic. So with all of those elements at hand, this would be the final result of the cinematic.
This is the moment I've been waiting for. This is what I trained for all these years. The fate of Tilted Towers is in my hands, and I will succeed.
Chaos has erupted as a massive unknown monster has appeared and is wreaking havoc across Tilted Towers. Authorities are urging everyone to evacuate the area immediately and seek shelter. This is Kate Bishop reporting live.
and that will be the cinematic. So as I showed you, it was a little bit just a bunch of stuff because I wanted this talk to be about the things that you can do. And I didn't cover a lot of other stuff that you can do. But what I wanted to do is just for you to kind of understand the potential of Sequencer and the many things that you can achieve. Now, if this is something that really interests you, well, here's my YouTube channel where I have different tutorials specific to cinematics and UEFN. And I have tutorials teaching you everything you need to know to do the cinematic that I just made. So you can check it out. I have a playlist that you can go. I also recommend these guys. They're amazing. They're called Bad Decision Studios. And they also have an amazing, Unreal Engine 5 beginner tutorial specific to cinematics. If you learn Unreal Engine 5 cinematics, the knowledge is applicable to UEFN. So thank you. Thank you very much for attending. I really, yeah. Thank you. And